But now it's time for the showstopper. You will love these individual Blackberry Meringue Tarts. Now, these are definitely the kind of tart you'd want to put on display. You need to show off a little. And it all starts with the crust, the Pate Sucree. Now, this time, instead of a large tart shell, I'm making individual tarts. And I'm using little tart rings. Now, I've made the same Pate Sucree dough. Because it's smaller, it's easy to lift into my tart ring. Now that I've got it in my shell, you can either just use your finger or a paring knife to just rub the dough off the edge. Give it a clean, sharp finish. The individual tart shells are ready to be chilled, and they only take about 20 minutes to set up. And here we go. I have some already chilled down. And just like a full-size tart, you want to dock the bottom. Lots of room for that luscious blackberry filling. There we go. Now these bake in a 350 oven, and they take about 20 minutes. So the same baking time as the pastry shell of a full-size tart, but that's simply what it takes to evenly crisp up from the sides all the way to the center. And that's the perfect amount of time for me to make my blackberry filling. Oh, if I can fill the kitchen with the smell of blackberries, I'm a happy girl. And I'll start with a warm pot, and I have 3 cups of fresh blackberries that have been washed. I'm not putting all of them in the pot, just about 2 cups worth. And I need half a cup of sugar. Now, here's a tool a baker doesn't often use, but it does come in handy, a potato masher. I use a potato masher when I'm making berry jams to extract the pectin from the seeds. So I'm not just crushing out the juice, but I'm crushing out the pectin within the seeds of the berries. So it'll help thicken it up a bit. I just want to simmer this down for a couple minutes, just to soften the berries and let all the juices come out. Oh, it doesn't take long for that beautiful fragrance to be drawn out of the blackberries. Now, to thicken it, I do have a bit of the pectin, but you also need cornstarch to help it along. 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and roughly 2 tablespoons of cool water. Then you can just pour it in. It immediately turns cloudy, and you can tell when it's cooked out once the entire mixture starts simmering again and becomes clear. Oh, it turns super glossy too once the cornstarch is activated. There. Now that it's fully thickened, it's shiny, but also clear, I can add my remaining blackberries. Just stir those right in. And the heat from the existing warm berries will just soften them up a little bit. Oh, look at that. And the last little flavor addition, because it's me, of course, a little vanilla. There we go. Now I just let this cool off the heat and chill it, because you do want to assemble the tarts with a chilled filling. But now my tart shells are ready to come out of the oven. And here they are. Just a hint of light brown around the edge, so I know they're done. Let them cool on the tray a little bit. You might be wondering, with a tender cookie crust and a deep, rich purple filling, won't that seep through? And your answer would be yes. So what I'm going to do is create a barrier by brushing the tart shells with melted white chocolate. 3 ounces of white chocolate. And in a recipe like this, you could use white chocolate chips or baking chocolate, sometimes called couverture. I'm going to put this over a water bath. And I don't want to bring the water to a boil underneath it, but just barely even a simmer. It's the steam that'll melt the chocolate. The reason I pick white chocolate over dark chocolate is white chocolate sets up a little more tender, a little softer than dark chocolate, so it matches with the Pate Sucree. It's a good habit when you're melting white chocolate to actually pull it off the heat before it's completely melted. That ensures you won't overheat it. And I'll just use a pastry brush, just like painting with any paint. I'm painting with chocolate now. You want to paint the inside of each of the shells. And you want to make sure you cover the bottom and even up the sides. There, I've now berry-proofed my Pate Sucree. go. I'll just pop these in the fridge to chill the chocolate. That way, when it's set, I can top it with that blackberry filling and wait till you see the meringue I have in store for these tarts. As a pastry chef, I would always feature a fruit tart of the day, depending what was in season, but Pate Sucree was always the base. And my Blackberry Meringue Tarts were best sellers, and you're about to see why. It's time to assemble. I've got my tart rings with the shells now lined with the white chocolate and chilled. I've got my cooled blackberry filling, so now it's time to fill. You can see that as the blackberry filling chills, it thickens up even more. So I'll put a spoonful in each. And now for the finishing touch, a beautiful meringue dolloped right on top. So I'm going to make the same meringue that you would make for a lemon meringue pie. It's called a common or a French meringue. So I have 4 egg whites in my mixer, and the egg whites are at room temperature. An important tip, to allow the egg whites to stretch and expand to their fullest volume. Also, to help that along, the ingredient that I used in my snickerdoodle cookies, and ½ teaspoon of cream of tartar. Now, I'll start mixing this first on a lower speed, then increase the speed to high. Once the egg whites are foamy, I'll slowly pour in 1/3 cup of granulated sugar and then 3 tablespoons of icing sugar. Important tip, turn off your mixer before you add icing sugar. Beautiful. I like to do the dunk, and then I've got a bit of a curl to the meringue, but it doesn't curl all the way over. That's a medium peak. Now, instead of being precious about these meringue tarts, I want to be rustic and approachable. Make these tarts so inviting you can't wait to just dig your fork right in. So instead of piping a fancy detail, I'm just going to do huge dollops right on top of each. Each one may look a little different, but that's the whole point. Get a nice little curl on the top. Just like baking meringue on a lemon meringue pie, you want a really hot oven, 400 degrees, but it only takes 5 minutes to set the meringue and brown it beautifully on top. Oh, aren't these absolutely stunning? And it's amazing, it only takes a few minutes to get that beautiful browning. A tart like this is best served the day it's made. You can serve it a little bit warm, cool to room temperature, or even chill it down so you can prepare it ahead and serve it later. Now, these are still hot, but the rings cool quickly, so I'll just lift that off. And onto my plate. Now remember, the filling was chilled, so the tart underneath is actually not hot, just the browning on the meringue, which is absolutely perfect.